One of our friends wrote me an email last week with a question in it and asked if I could do a BBC on it. So here is what he says. He said, "We are all in the same samsaric boat, both men and women. We both have the same three poisons of ignorance, anger, and attachment. Yet men definitely appear to be in charge of the boat. They are the captain." This was written by a man, okay? "They are the captain and the crew. Women are just passengers. Far and away, men commit most violent crimes and disproportionately fill our prisons. 93% are male. Men have started most of the wars throughout history, and men perform way more of the three non-virtues of killing, stealing, and unwise and unkind sexual behavior. This is true in all societies and cultures. Even Buddhism, which emphasizes equality and was opposed to the Hindu caste system, doesn't treat nuns the same as monks." So what is wrong with us guys? Okay. Is it just that we are bigger and stronger and had to fight off those saber-toothed tigers? So we like to throw our dominance around. Or is there a much deeper reason for our violent tendencies? Is it our karma? Does negative karma from previous lives determine our rebirth as male instead of female? Personally, I am often disgusted with the behavior of my fellow men. I think women have it all over us guys when it comes to kindness and compassion. Kindness and compassion, and are on a faster track to attaining bodhicitta and awakening. I would love to see a woman president. Us men have screwed things up in this country for long enough, and we certainly don't need a president with misogynistic tendencies. If you look at the mating rituals of many other animal species, you see that males are always fighting each other to prevail in procreation. It establishes dominance, but the loser rarely is killed in the process. In fact, animals generally kill only for food. This is obviously not the case for the males of the human species. And then asked me if I would do a BBC on this very provocative subject. And he said, "So keep my name out of it." Women will probably love these comments, but my male Buddhist buddies may want to beat me up. Okay. Yeah, I think he has a point there. I remember one time, many years ago, I was at a Buddhist center with another woman, and we were talking to the young geshe there who spoke English. And somehow the topic of men and women came up. And he was saying, that men were superior because when there was a conflict, men would fight with the opposing party and women would run away. And the other woman and I looked at each other and said, "Well, that actually shows women are smarter." Yeah, because we don't want to engage in a conflict that's going to, wind up with someone getting hurt. So it was very interesting to see his perspective of what, constituted being smart, or, Yeah, actually, this whole thing of men and women, I just think is so disturbing that, and it takes so much of our time and energy, discussing all of this and working our way through misogynism and working our way through prejudice. I mean, it would just be so much easier for human beings in total, if we just respect each other regardless of gender. Yeah? just because it takes so much time, all this quarreling and processing and da-da-da-da-da. I know for myself, having done a lot of processing, when I went into Buddhism, because I was the oldest child. I did better than my brother in school. So I never grew up thinking, oh, women are, lesser. And then it was very strange for me living in the Tibetan community. And I didn't realize it until I came back to the US, how much I had lost my self-confidence living in that environment, given the general attitude towards nuns there. Yeah. It's quite curious because you'll have women in Tibetan society, they run the shops, they will hold, government positions and, run businesses. But in the context of religion, not at all, Only women who are, in the Tibetan society, only women who are relatives of prominent Tibetan lamas actually are the ones who teach, which is quite unfortunate. And this is what His Holiness Dalai Lama is trying to, change, and which is actually monumental because we have the first group of geshimas who are going to receive their geshima, comparable to PhD degree, on December 22nd at Drepung Monastery in front of all the monks. His Holiness himself is going to give them their degrees. So this is like the first time in history. It's marvelous. Yeah, I wrote one of my friend, who's also a senior bhikshuni, and actually I think several of us, the senior Western bhikshunis, are going to be there. And I said, we need to bring tissue because we'll all be crying in the back of the room from joy. Yeah, because it's really something to see. But in terms of his comments, is it due to karma? It probably has something to do with karma. Interestingly, in Tibetan society, it's quite interesting. If you call somebody a name, like say, you're acting like a woman, that's considered an insult. And they say you're creating karma to be born as a woman for 500 rebirths. And that's considered something very bad. Yeah, there's never anything about if you, call somebody you're acting like a man, that's creating bad karma at all. I mean, I would think it would be equal if you said something with a disparaging tone. But it's interesting how they view that. And actually, they say if you praise male qualities, it causes you to be born as a male. But aside from all of that kind of stuff, in thinking about it, and what he pointed out, that the majority of crimes in our country are committed by men, I think that may have a few factors involved. One is, I think, testosterone just makes people more aggressive or more physically, energetically like that. That's one theory. Another is socialization. And this Sunday, we're going to watch this movie. What is the title of it? The Mask You Are In, yeah. And I haven't seen it yet, but it is about the conditioning that males received. And I did watch the trailer for it, and it showed some of those conditionings, like little boys being told, but men don't cry, or man it up, or, don't let your emotions show. It means that you're weak. So I think boys and young men receive all of that kind of conditioning. And that is just as damaging to them as the conditioning little girls and young women receive about you've got to be beautiful, otherwise you're not worth anything. Yeah. So society perpetuates these kind of stereotypes and conditions the younger generation in this way to think very, very narrowly of themselves. And this conditioning starts quite young. You know, what's the first question when somebody has a baby? What's the first question people ask? Is it a boy or a girl? Yeah? And so as soon as you know that, then the subtle and not so subtle conditioning begins. And this becomes, I think, very harmful for everybody because both sexes are told, you know, you've got to be like this or something's wrong with you, instead of just letting people's natural tendencies come out and, you know what I mean, yeah? So it's, it's kind of distressing how this conditioning works and permeates all the societies. And to really overcome it, it's work we have to do in ourselves, because this conditioning started when we were very, very young. And so to really look at it, and in the case of women to say, no, my human value is not based on being sexy. Yeah? That is not the purpose of my life. That is not my human value. And for men similarly, you know, to say, feeling my emotions and expressing them is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of being a human being. Yeah. So these are just, illustrations of conditioning. There's much, much more. But to really see it in ourselves and free our own minds from it, and then that will influence how we relate to society as a whole. I mean, of course, legislative things are important. Making equal pay for women is important. It was quite interesting for me that the equal rights law, was that the name of it? Equal Rights Amendment was defeated due primarily to the action of a woman who passed away recently. I forget her name. Phyllis Schlafly. And her concern was that if women were treated equal, then men wouldn't pay alimony and child support and things like that in the case of divorce. Well, now they don't anyway. But it would really be nice to have that Equal Rights Amendment, because still in our country, which talks about equality, women don't get paid equally to men for doing the same job. And I know from experience that you're treated differently when you're in a leadership role, when you're a woman. And whenever people write to the Abbey and they don't know, who the leader is, it's always, "Dear Sir." Yeah, even from Buddhist organizations. Or, "Dear Mr. Chudran." Yeah, it's quite interesting. The assumption is, if you're a leader, you've got to be male. And what a wrong assumption that is. Okay? So I think really, to sum it up, rooting out the tendencies in ourself for our own self image, and then trying to root out the projections we have on others regarding gender, and then, of course, legislation where it's needed. But the main thing is to really start with ourselves. Because until we free ourselves of that conditioning, the other things are not going to completely work. Yeah. Anybody have any other comments to his what he wrote?
I just thought, I haven't really thought about it, but I just thought, okay, the men have mothers and they have sisters, so women. I think that is very important to encourage each other, to empower each other.
Yeah. Yeah, so the importance of women helping other women, and when women are mothers, not favoring their sons, yeah, but having equal for their children, whether they're men or women, and fathers too. You know, I think fathers often see their sons as, you know, the potential to be everything they weren't able to be. And so favor their sons in that way, although they would not favor their daughters in that way.
I think when a little girl can see his father doing female stuff, the girl will understand that female and men do
The same jobs, yeah.
and also is and the opposite, no? So changing the roles, no?
Yeah.
The stereotype.
Okay, so we have certain jobs in the family and certain jobs in the world that are usually associated as male and female. So if you see somebody else doing the job that's usually associated with the opposite sex, that helps you have a different view. Yeah, very much. Very much, yeah.
I think it's also important in the context of these questions to recognize how much has changed in the last 100 years.
Yeah.
And through the efforts of many people, and that we can't stop trying to make a change.
Yeah.
It's so many generations, it's so ancient.
Yeah.
It's going to take a long time, and we can't.
Okay, so to comment on how much progress has been made in, let's say, the last 100 years, and that it hasn't even been 100 years that women have been allowed to vote in this country. Isn't that outrageous? You know, not even 100 years. But that it's going to, you know, it's based, that change that's happened has been due to the efforts of a lot of people. And it's going to take continued effort for a long time because it's very slow to change. Yeah?
I remember I had to be about grade 4, so 10 years old, when I first read about the difference in wages between men and women. And as I went through school, you know, this topic kept coming up, and I was astounded in high school. I'm astounded now that this is still a situation. You know,
Yeah.
that many years later, that in progressive society, this is still happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So how many years later in a progressive society, the conversation about equal wages came up maybe 40 years ago, and it still hasn't been accomplished. And how astounding that is, considering, you know, what's happened in this country.
I think it's gone up 20 cents on the dollar.
It's gone up 20 cents in the dollar. Oh, that's good.
In the 60s, and now it's around 72, 75, something.
Yeah, yeah, but it's really, really rather interesting, isn't it? Oh, now I remember what it was. After the debate a couple of days ago, in the paper yesterday, there was an article saying something like, Hillary won't be man-interrupted. And another one saying, women all over kind of experience what Hillary did during the debate. And then both articles were talking about the number of times Trump interrupted her. Yeah, the constant interrupting that he did, whereas she interrupted him just a very few times, but he interrupted her many times. And the articles were saying, you know, women who work in the world have this happen all the time. You know, you're at a meeting in work, or you're just discussing something with a client, or, you know, whatever it is, and it's completely okay for men to interrupt the women. If a woman interrupts a man, she's being aggressive and pushy and things like that. Yeah. It's quite interesting. Yeah. So Hillary, one of the praises she got for the debate was she maintained her cool in that. Yeah. I don't know how men do when they get interrupted. You know, probably not so well. Yeah. But I also marvel at sometimes the body language that goes on. Often when I see men talking to each other, they're standing with their legs apart and their arms like this. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed that. Whereas women, when they're talking to each other, their posture is different. Yeah, their arms certainly aren't like this. Kind of interesting. So, anyway, I hope I pushed enough buttons.